You know that moment when you did almost everything right, and somehow your attention goes straight to the one thing you missed? Not because someone pointed it out, not because anyone said anything. It just happens. Like your mind already knows where to look. You could have done 10 things correctly, maybe even better than expected, and still, something in you goes straight to the flaw. Not the result, not the effort, the flaw. And it doesn't feel dramatic when it happens. It feels normal, like that's just how your mind works. You already knew this. Because it didn't start today. It didn't even start recently. It started in moments that felt small at the time. Like bringing home something you were proud of, and the first thing someone noticed was what was missing. Or finishing something completely, and watching someone scan past all of it just to point out what you didn't do. Nothing loud, nothing extreme, just consistent. And when something happens consistently enough, the brain stops questioning it. It starts adapting to it. That's when something changed. Because at first, the voice was external. It came from somewhere specific. A tone, a look, a comment that landed heavier than it seemed. But over time, something subtle happened. You started hearing it before anyone said anything. You started correcting yourself before anyone could. Replaying what you said, rewriting what you typed, scanning for mistakes no one else was even looking for. And at some point, the original voice wasn't needed anymore. You had already learned the pattern. You're not overly sensitive. You're trained. That's the part most people miss. Because from the outside, it looks like overthinking. But from the inside, it feels like prevention. Like if you catch the mistake early enough, you can avoid something worse. That's why you notice tone shifts no one else reacts to. That's why silence feels like something is wrong. That's why even good moments don't fully settle. Because part of you is still checking, just in case. And if this is already starting to make sense, stay with this. Because this didn't come from nowhere. It follows a pattern explained more deeply in Learning to Feel Safe. But here's where it goes deeper. At some point, it stopped being about what you did and started feeling like something was wrong with you. Not the action, not the outcome. You. And that shift changes everything. Because once it becomes identity, it doesn't matter how much you achieve. You can reach something big, something you worked for, and still feel like it wasn't enough. Or worse, like it doesn't count. You already knew this, because the satisfaction never stays. It fades faster than it should. And almost immediately, the next thing appears. The next thing to fix. The next thing to improve. The next thing that could go wrong. That's when something else forms. Not just the voice, but the way you move through things. You double-check everything. You hesitate before speaking. You replay conversations after they end. Not because you want to, but because your system learned that missing something had a cost. And it still acts like that cost is coming, even when it isn't. That's why calm can feel unfamiliar. That's why ease doesn't fully register. Because your system didn't learn to expect ease. It learned to expect correction. And when correction is what your mind expects, peace doesn't feel stable. It feels temporary, like something you shouldn't trust yet. But something shifts when you start seeing it clearly. Not as truth, but as a pattern. A learned pattern. You stop treating that voice like authority. You start recognizing it as something that was installed, not something that defines you. And that creates distance. Not instantly, but enough. Enough to pause before reacting. Enough to question it instead of obeying it. Enough to realize something important. You didn't become like this for no reason. There was a time when this made sense. When paying attention like this helped you. When catching mistakes early protected you. When being hard on yourself felt safer than waiting for someone else to do it. But that was then. and your system kept going, long after it needed to. An old pattern, still running in a place where it no longer belongs. If you want to understand this more deeply, it's explored further in Learning to Feel Safe. And if this felt familiar, like the video, subscribe, and share what part stood out. You didn't become too much. You became trained to notice everything.